A garnishment is a court-mandated deduction withheld from an employee's wage. The employer withholds the garnishment from the employee's paycheck and then submits that amount to the appropriate agency. While garnishments are a type of deduction and there's a separate video on the setup of deductions and benefits, this video will cover only garnishments. Garnishments are set up underneath Setup, Payroll Details, and Deductions and Benefits. You can see on the list that I have 2 garnishments already set up. One is for child support and one is for unpaid taxes. I'm going to edit the one for child support first. Each garnishment that you create needs to have a unique abbreviation on it, and it needs to have a name. The type that you'll select in the type box is garnishment, and when you do that, it will enable this field on the screen that you see, labeled sequence. And the sequence is used so that you can control the order in which garnishments are calculated for an employee if they have more than one. Each garnishment will have a liability account associated with it, and since liability accounts, payroll liability accounts specifically in CenterPoint require you to assign a vendor to the liability account, you will need to have one garnishment deduction for every vendor that needs to be paid, or at least one garnishment deduction for every vendor that needs to be paid. The W-2 box is generally left blank for these garnishments, but if you do need to put that on a W-2, you can select the appropriate box from the lookup. There are 2 methods to calculate the garnishment. One is that it's calculated based off of the employee's gross wages, and the other is that it's calculated based off of disposable wages. Each garnishment that you create will default to a schedule where it will be calculated on each and every pay run. If that doesn't work for this garnishment, then you could select a different deduction schedule or create a new one that will work. The rates are usually left 0. We'll usually assign those at the employee level. For a child support deduction, we generally don't need to select anything on the limits tab. I'll talk about that when we get to the other garnishment. The taxes tab will default to all of your taxes being on the left, and the only time you need to move anything over to the right is if you have a tax that shouldn't be calculated until the garnishment is deducted from the gross earnings. On the earnings tab, you want to move to the right any earnings that you have that we shouldn't calculate this garnishment on. So I've identified that I would not want to calculate this garnishment on any payroll advances or any reimbursements paid to the employee. Now, if I had just created this deduction, when I clicked save, it would ask me if I wanted to add this to any of my employees. I'm not going to get that message because this one's already been existing. So I'm just going to click save, but you can add it to your employees at that point. Just keep in mind there'll probably be some additional setup. Now we're going to go into the tax garnishment, and I'm going to edit that. And I'm just going to talk about a couple things that are different here. Number 1, I have a different sequence number on it. I also have a different liability account because it's going to a different vendor. It also is using a different method. This one's going to be using disposable wages. On the limits tab for this one, I am going to check this box for a lifetime limit. And the reason why I'm doing that is this particular garnishment is a finite amount. He owes a certain amount for taxes that are unpaid. And once those are repaid, the garnishment shouldn't be taken out anymore. Where with a child support one, it is more ongoing. I'm not going to put an amount in the limit field. I'll assign that when I get to the employee, but I'm just going to check this box for lifetime limit. Now the taxes and the earnings tab are going to be the same for this garnishment as they were for the child support. So I'm just going to click save, and then we're going to close out of the setup of deductions and benefits. I'm going to go into the setup of employees now to talk about how we set this up on the employee. So I'm going to edit my employee, John Q. Cottonwood, and we're going to go to his Deductions and Benefits tab. If these deductions and benefits weren't already on his list, I could go down to the list of deductions and benefits at the bottom and put a check mark in them, and it would add it to his list of deductions and benefits. To the right is a percentage. And if I need to limit the garnishments to a percentage of this person's total net income, then I could put that percentage into the box here. Okay, I'm leaving mine at 100%, but he may need to get at least a certain percentage of his net income after all the garnishments are taken out. So the limit can be put right there. For each of the garnishments at the higher level on this tree, I could highlight it, and on the right-hand side, I could put in an alternate name for it if I wanted to have an alternate name as it was assigned to this employee. At the employee level, I'm able to put in the details of the court order. So this particular one for his child support was a percentage, and he has to pay 24% of his gross earnings, up to $475. And his order also said that he needed to have a minimum net pay of $1,500. So I've put all of that into the details here. Down below is a list of other deductions that he has. And if any of these other deductions needed to be deducted from his earnings before calculating the garnishment, I could check those. And if they had a maximum reduction amount, I could indicate that over in the right-hand side. Okay, I don't have any that need to be calculated prior to this garnishment being calculated. Then down below, I'm going to go into the tax garnishment. And this one was a little bit different than the child support one in that it's a fixed amount rather than a percentage. So when you have a fixed amount, what you want to do is you want to put a high percentage into the rate field. And then in the up to the amount field, you're going to put the fixed amount that you want taken out. Well, the system would let me put in 100%, so I put in 99%, and then in the up to the amount field, I put in the amount that should be taken out of his paycheck. This order didn't require that he have a minimum net pay, so I didn't put that into the field. And I also still don't have any deductions that need to be deducted before this garnishment is calculated. When I set up this garnishment, I put a check mark in the lifetime limit field. So it's also adding these two fields at the bottom that allows me to put in the total amount of this garnishment. So the total amount of his order is for $8,900, and he's already paid back $4,200. So as I take money out of his paycheck, it'll keep increasing this amount repaid until it gets to the lifetime limit, and then it'll stop it. So that takes care of the setup on the deductions and benefits tab. And these deductions are going to be like any other deductions. When it's taken out of the employee's paycheck, it'll be posted to a liability. And there is a separate video on how to pay payroll liabilities. So the only thing that I want to talk about as far as that goes is for those of you who have direct deposit, you can include the payment of these garnishments in your direct deposit file. Okay, so if you do that on the direct deposit tab, and I've already set that up, you do need to have, of course, the bank routing number and the bank account number for the vendor that needs to be paid to. You'll notice for the one that is child support that I have checked the checkbox for the child support addenda. When I did that, it enabled these other fields here. You're going to check the checkbox for this child support addenda if an additional addenda record is required on your NACHA file to provide supplemental data such as an account number or additional information to the payment receiver. Okay, and then the two fields that are enabled are a case court order number and an FIPS locator code. You can check the documentation for details about what those numbers are. Now for the other one, since I didn't have a child support addenda check mark in it, those fields are disabled. So we're going to click Save on that, and I'm going to go ahead and start a payroll that will show you how this will work. So I'm going to go to Processes and Pay Employees, where I've already started a pay run just to make things go a little quicker. And I've only included John Cottonwood in this payroll to make things a little more simplified. And then for him, I've also taken and only calculated these two deductions rather than any other deductions he has. So you can see that it calculated his child support, but it capped it at the $475, and it went ahead and it calculated his other garnishment for unpaid taxes. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go to the Print Checks tab, and I'm going to display the liabilities so that we can go ahead and post this. And you can see those liabilities are getting calculated. There's the $475 and there's the $25. The other ones are for his state income taxes and his federal income taxes. So we're going to click OK on that, and it's going to ask us to go ahead and create this direct deposit file. So I'll put on the date for the direct deposit file on there, and we'll create the direct deposit file. Now, what will happen with direct deposit is I will submit that file to the bank and it'll initiate those payments. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't alleviate the payroll liability in CenterPoint. So you still do need to indicate that that payroll liability was paid by going to Processes and Pay Invoices Due. You would choose the date that the payment was made, which was the date of my direct deposit file. And then I'm going to have a separate sequence for my electronic funds transfers, or I could just put EFT into the field. And I'm going to indicate which liabilities were paid with that direct deposit so that I can get them off the list and I can mark them as paid. Now, I'm not going to print that or anything. I'm just going to post that liability, and I want to tell the system what bank account that came out of. So I'm just going to go ahead and post it. And then I can proceed with paying any other liabilities the way that I would normally pay them. And again, we do have that video on how to pay your payroll liabilities that you'll want to review for that.